Now, the South African presidents in Business for South Africa continue to collaborate on strategic initiatives to address challenges within the key focal areas of energy, transport and logistics, crime and corruption. That's in order to help grow the economy and restore investor and public confidence. Well, this collaboration between B4SA and the SA presidency is helping to turn things around. Let's speak to B4SA Steering Committee Chairman Martin Kingston. There has been an update recently. I think there was a meeting just the other day. Good afternoon, Martin. Welcome to eNCA. Thank you very much for joining us. You guys have been meeting, I guess. You touched base the other day just to talk about how things are going. How are they?
Yes, good afternoon, Dan. Well, we did have a meeting last Friday. We have every 2 or 3 weeks a meeting of the Joint Strategic Oversight Committee that's chaired by the Director General in the presidency, takes stock of what we're doing, identifies obstacles which we should address, and prepares for the meeting with the president and his cabinet colleagues. Obviously, we're now in the election cycle. I'm sure you'll want to talk about that. So we're actually taking stock of how far we've come and indeed the way forward for the next year.
Okay.
And I say for the next year because we've been going now for 11 months, and I think we've made very material progress in each of the focal areas, as you've said, in energy, transport and logistics, and crime and corruption. And I'm sure you'd want to interrogate some of that in greater detail.
Yeah, I just want to know, you mentioned another year. You're approaching this year on a yearly basis. I mean, this is a huge chunk of problems. Is that a decision that you've made consciously to look just at 1 year ahead?
Well, looking at longer than 1 year, but we feel that we need to measure progress on a very clear and precise basis. So we've got a critical path. When I say we, that's government and business. For the next 24 months, we think, for example, that we'll have ended load shedding by the end of 2025. We'd like to believe in crime and corruption, that we will be off the grey list in the course of 2025. And in the case of transport and logistics, that we'll see a material increase in performance. To do that, we've got to have a granular assessment of what needs to be done, and we monitor it actually, frankly, on a weekly basis in all of those 3 areas.
Okay, before we just double click on those 3 areas to get a sense what's the progress that's been made, are you concerned that the outcome of the election might be like a little speed bump along this road, or are you hopeful that government being what it is, the rest of it will continue to maintain the momentum that you've started to build?
Yeah, Dan, I think that's exactly the right question. You know, for us, the 29th of May is obviously a critical date on the political calendar and for the electorate at large. For us, frankly, it's a date in the diary. We're going to carry on working, and we and government, and we've made it clear that we're working with the government of the day, whomsoever that will be, are committed to that process. And that's why actually we will build on the momentum, exactly the right word, that we've already established. Commit further resources. We've got 350 people working across all of these work streams, subject matter experts, including expertise that we've donated to the government through the Resource Mobilization Fund. We are actually completely ambivalent about what is going to happen in terms of the partnership. We have no doubt that the structural reform that is clearly part of the agenda is now being implemented and will move forward accordingly.
Okay. Transport and logistics was a big headache just a couple of years ago. Actually, as recently as last year, we were seeing a lot of backlogs in a number of our harbours, whether it was in Durban and Richards Bay, and all kinds of challenges, and the railway network. But I saw a report recently saying that progress is being made, even at Transnet. Tell us more. What has happened?
Well, so it is being made. It was essential that we saw new executive management put in place, and we've obviously now got a new permanent CEO, CFO, and CEO of Transnet Freight Rail. We've got a new board. We're working very closely with both the executive and indeed the board, right up to the chairman. And as you say, we're seeing some of those results starting to feed through. You know, 36% of the time less waiting time for anchoring of vessels. 45% fewer vessels that are anchored outside Durban. Not as much as we would like, not as quick as we would like. We're seeing a decrease, for example, in the security incidents on the coal line, some 65% decrease, reduction in those security incidents. And we know that the freight logistics roadmap has been published along with the Transnet turnaround plan, and we've mobilized expertise, as I said before, Dan, to work both with and in Transnet and more broadly with government. But we need to accept that the constraints you referred to, we think that it could subtract 3 to 5% from GDP, the areas that we're talking about, take time. It took time to get to where we are, and real discernible improvement on a sustainable basis will also take time.
Okay, let's look at the issue then of crime and corruption. I'm coming there first because it affects all of us daily.
Yeah, so I believe that we would all agree, as you say, it affects us as individuals, as companies. It affects the mood of the country at large. It's the most difficult. We need to stay as business in our lane. That doesn't mean we can't give specific support on an arm's length basis, which was what we're doing. We've agreed the structures under the auspices of the Joint Initiative on Crime and Corruption. We're participating directly in those work streams, co-chairing some of them. And I have to say, designing, developing, and putting in place the architecture for appropriate governance of those structures and resourcing them appropriately was a necessary first step, along with agreeing priority interventions. Those priority interventions have now been agreed, including, for example, making sure that the Forensic Analysis Center, which we've already contributed to, is up and running. We think that's essential. Identifying a limited number of key prosecutions where we can provide, again, on an arm's length basis, support, because I believe we would all agree that that prosecutions and successful convictions is absolutely necessary. And finally, putting in place the 10111 line, that'll happen in the coming months, again, to ensure that we've got a responsive approach to the requirements of society. And unless and until such time as we address the pernicious issue of crime and corruption, confidence levels, as you mentioned at the beginning, Dan, will continue to be low.
Yeah. Will we end load shedding by the end of 2025?
Oh, I have no doubt that if we maintain the trajectory that we're seeing, we will and we should. You know, on a year-on-year basis, there's been a 60% reduction in load shedding overall. We're not just talking about the last month. In fact, there's been an 80% reduction year-on-year in load shedding for stages 4 and above. And that's really attributable to two factors. One is better performance from the ESCOM fleet. It's not just burning diesel, I have to say. It's actually the energy availability factor has improved. And the second is a very significant amount of new energy generation coming on stream. So 6 gigawatts already on stream, twice that in the investment pipeline. We've opened it up through the sort of structural reform that was necessary, the establishment of the National Transmission Company, again, the appointment of a permanent chief executive in the form of Dan Marikani, and making sure that ESCOM is financially stable with a debt relief package that's been agreed. All of that took time, but it creates the framework, along with the ERA bill, which is going to be, we hope, signed by the president relatively soon, to ensure that we've got scope for real private sector participation and that we can hold everybody, the public and the private sector, appropriately to account. So I'm quite confident, Dan, that if we maintain the momentum, we will see stage 1 by the end of this year being hopefully the peak, and no load shedding of any significance by the end of next year.
Thank you very much for your time and update for us here on eNCA. Martin Kingston, he's of course the chairman of the B4SA steering committee, just updating us on those 3 focal areas they've been working with government to resolve, and painting a very hopeful picture and positive picture about the progress that's being made. More news shortly here on Today. Stay with us.
In this election,